Hello and welcome to another edition of the Dakota Leader. Today we're going to be reviewing what is going on in Pierre, South Dakota. We are in the 98th legislative session, and I'm joined this afternoon by my guest, Jessica Polema. Jessica is part of South Dakota Canvassing, which is a grassroots-led effort to encourage voter integrity, clean up voter rolls, remove deceased individuals from the voter rolls, for example. They have been working very hard and very diligently to analyze the data from the 2020 election, and then also the most recent primary. And of course, Donald Trump, won handily in South Dakota. So this is not a Trump group that is fighting against the results of the 2020 election. This is a group of residents and individuals who want to restore trust in the process and make sure that confidence is high from what I understand, what I've seen. And there's a lot of crossover between what they have done and also some other more recent lawsuits brought forward by, say, the tribes, for example. So without further ado, Jessica, thank you so much for joining me. So you were at the Capitol yesterday, as I understand it, and you guys were working with several lawmakers and trying to advance some election integrity bills. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what bills you were hoping to see move forward?
Right. Yeah. Well, we were at the Capitol and we had, the Freedom Caucus has been really great to work with. So there's a number of legislators that also believe in election integrity and bringing real bills that will fix the problem. And so our group has made, a real big issue of what we found. And what we did was just went out to see what we could see and find what we could find. And then we analyzed it. And after we looked at all the facts and the actual data and the affidavits and everything that we've done with boots on the ground, we came to an opinion or an assessment that we do have some issues, and that's all fact-based. And so, we made it clear to the county commissioners, the county auditors, the legislature. We had our cast vote record hearing this summer, or maybe it was beginning of September, late August. And all of those things show, we have some work to do and address the issues. So now it's kind of the battle of the election bills. So last year we had 5 in the legislature. This year is 31.
Wow.
And so there are a number of legislators that are bringing bills. And there's the Band-Aids, and then there's the surgery. And so there's all different kinds of bills, and they do all different kinds of things, but there's actually, several competing bills. And some of those are the ones that we testified for yesterday that maybe have a similar bill in the Senate or brought by a different legislator. And they, there's one that fixes maybe one issue, and there's one that fixes maybe 20 of the issues, and trying to bring them together. So yesterday there were 6 election bills on the slate. First one brought by Tina Mullally, giving the legislature, I think it was a HB 1105, bringing the legislature standing in an election contest or suit, or, something that would need to be remedied with, say, the Secretary of State and those kinds of issues.
And just to interject very quickly, that's important because, as I understand it, there have been multiple lawsuits that have been dismissed for lack of standing. Is that correct?
Well, it seems across the country that was, the judge's favorite excuse to ignore the evidence and claim lack of standing. So it's important to have standing, and I guess you need to have it in the law that you have standing, because common sense doesn't prevail these days. So the bill that was brought earlier to give the citizens standing in an election contest or suit failed. And I think that was brought by Representative John Sharda. And then Tina Mullally's bill with the legislature. So Senator Schoenbeck brought one in the Senate, and I think it was SB 16. No, that's not it. Maybe it was 116. There's 31 of them for me to keep track of. So excuse me if I quote the wrong one. But anyway, they were conflicting. And the House State Affairs killed her bill yesterday and said, well, why don't you go work? And Representative Mullally made it clear that she had requested with the LRC, if there is any bill that is presented similar to mine, let me know so that we can work together. And that was not done. And it seems that may have been done a few times. And then you start to wonder if that's intentional. And then Representative Auk brought a bill yesterday, HB 1199 for post-election audits. Senator David Wheeler brought one in the Senate that passed through the Senate, SB 1, I think that's 160, to bring post-election audits. And his bill, we're not in favor of that bill because it gives, it tells the world in state law which race they're going to audit, ahead of time. So I don't know how that prevents fraud or anomalies. And then it also, if there is a recount, in case of a recount, they don't have to do a hand count verification, which makes no sense because currently in state law, we do our recounts with a tabulator. So that doesn't make any sense to me either.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and so, okay, let me back you up here just a little bit. So, can you explain what you mean by it announces, the bill would announce to the world in state law? So does that mean that there would be one specific race or one specific county that would always be sort of the litmus test, if you will, for a post-election audit? Or what does that mean, or what does that look like exactly?
Well, his bill would require 5% of the precincts in the county to hand count all the votes cast in the 2 statewide contests that have the closest result. So, that might sound random, but to those of us that have been studying this for quite a while, it's not quite random enough. And then it takes the top 2 closest races, statewide race, which, we've found all across the country evidence or proven overturned elections in county commission races, school board races, legislative races. So we just don't think it goes far enough to find, any program that could be wrong with the machines and any miscalculated races, because in the case in Georgia in the 2022 primary, the last place candidate found some anomalies and reported it. They redid the whole race, or recounted the whole thing, and she went from last place to first place. So the programming gave 36 out of 40, I believe, of the precincts her votes to another candidate. Wow. So when you see evidence of that across the country, and these are with ES&S machines also, which South Dakota uses in all the counties, it's a good attempt. But if we have the opportunity to enact a post-election audit, let's go a little farther than the bare minimum, just to say, oh, we enacted post-election audits and that's a nice little check mark on my next campaign flyer, when in fact it doesn't go far enough.
It makes sense in my mind that these post-election audits would be drawn at random. You would just bring something up and then review the results and make sure you take, and I'm no expert by any means, but from my understanding, you would take a hand counted sampling, right? Just a sampling at random. And then you would compare those to the images or the results of what the computer captured. Is that right?
Yeah. So, our elected officials have been telling us it's against state law for the tabulators to take images of the ballots, which is not true, because when we asked which state law does indeed say that, there isn't one. So, and we have records of our cast vote records on a flash drive that there are ballot images. That's what the machines do.
Okay.
So, just to dispel that untruth there. But yes, it would compare with the results from the tabulators. And So they aren't using the cast vote records to compare, which is an audit tool that the EAC, recommends, and it's necessary for the machines to have those to even be EAC certified. So yeah, the comparison would be with a machine tally for that precinct with what the hand count results would show.
Got it. Well, and so that makes perfect sense why it should be done at random as opposed to something that's already set in stone. And no, that's the whole point in my mind of why you would do a post-election audit, is to make sure that there was integrity in the system, right? So that bill, what happened with that bill, by the way?
Well, that bill, I think yesterday was crossover day, and so that bill now needs to go to a House committee to be, reviewed there. So it's not all the way through. It hasn't been signed by the governor or anything, but it's halfway on its way. And Representative Auk's bill then, that had a lot more specifics, took into account a lot more of those issues, was killed. And then they just said, well, why don't you guys go work together? We would like to see you work with Senator Wheeler and combine your bills. They should have passed the bill, and then it would have had to gone to conference. Instead, they killed it. So there is no leverage there for for Representative Auk to say, yeah, we're supposed to work together. And I confronted Senator Wheeler in the hallway after that Senate committee yesterday and said, hey, that's what the House committee says. They want you to work together. And he kind of scoffed. He goes, I don't know how I'm going to do that. So it was kind of a joke. And it shows clear intention. They have their slate of election bills that, they're willing to push through just to make it look good and not fix the issues, and they're in clear alliance with the auditors and the Association of County Officials. And they printed their slate of stronger and safer election bills that they're promoting in the majority report of the GOP publication here in February.
That's right. I was taking a look at that, and I understand that there were some perhaps misrepresentations made in the majority report that more or less appeared to be right. The safer slate maybe appears to be more effective policy than it really is, which is what it sounds like you're saying, right? The bills that were actually going to be effective were killed, and then the bills that are maybe even potentially harmful going forward. I mean, maybe that's a bit too far, but it sounds to me, if we're going to be doing a post-election audit, then to then have something codified in law that announces which race is going to be, audited, that's almost a step backwards. I mean, anyways, so that's really interesting. We have this more or less in party, and they are now kind of checking the boxes, if you will, to look as though they are doing something really important. Now, I understand that some remarks were made yesterday at the Capitol, and you were called a communist. How did that? Can you walk me through that a little bit? What happened?
Well, so last year was my first year into this, and we went to the Capitol, and we went to the Senate State Affairs Committee to testify in a couple of election integrity bills. And that day, the room was full of high school students that were there visiting. And Senator Schoenbeck proceeded to call us all fanatics, radicals, and lunatics, and told all the children that were sitting there that your parents don't think like these crazy people. They trust the poll workers that work in your town, and anyway, completely slandered us while we were there. And so, being consistent, he proceeded to do the same thing to us yesterday. And after we testified for Senator Julie Frye-Mueller's election bills, which was also a voter roll cleanup, getting dead people off the voter rolls, and then making sure that we can't just sign an affidavit and say that's who I am. You have to have some sort of an ID or a social security number, which is only common sense. But he proceeded to call out the group of 6 on the other side of the room that clearly have some kind of obsession and weird obsession and fetish, and proceeded to use the word fetish about 7 times in his tirade against us. I was sitting in the front row and even called point of order while the chair, Casey Crabtree, sat there and let him slander us again in full view. I brought my son along, and my son was witness to the Senate pro tem slandering our group of volunteer citizens that again took time and money and effort to come and speak to them and present real evidence of problems with our elections. So it was truly distasteful and disrespectful. And we had a 23-year military veteran on the line testifying for these election integrity bills, who was also completely disgusted, and in her testimony said, you know, please don't disrespect me and my service like that, you know, because she just happened to have different views than he does. So yeah, it was disgusting. And then he called us communists, made some reference to sex trafficking. I can't remember exactly what it was. I have to go back and listen to the entire audio clip, but we do have it on video. And I would just like to say, Mr. Schoenbeck likes to, you know, use lack of decorum for his political vendetta against Senator Julie Frey-Mueller, which was a personal conversation out of the legislature, when the lack of decorum rules are actually to be used for the legislators while they are, you know, in their professional capacity, either on the floor or in their Senate committees. And that was clear evidence of lack of decorum by the Senate pro tem, and his clear disdain and hate for our group, and is more than willing to publicly slander us anytime he gets a chance.
Wow.
Yeah. So disgusting.
Shocking. That is shocking. I mean, it's not given his history, but it is shocking to me that this type of behavior is allowed to persist. And
especially when we called point of order in the meeting. I mean, that was the chair's duty to bring back the decorum, correct? So I also talked to Casey Crabtree after that meeting and said that it's clear that you aren't allowed to have your own opinion or do your job as a chair, because you all do what Senator Schoenbeck says. And he thought that was unfortunate that I thought that. And I said, well, if he would have called the you know, point of order, it may have restored some faith in him, but he didn't, and allowed the, you know, the slander to continue.
interesting. You know, I've received multiple CC'd emails, individuals who have emailed their senators, such as Senator Lee Schoenbeck, Senator Roll, Michael Roll, Wheeler, another one was Crabtree. You know, it's fascinating to me because you have a represented body reaching out to their representatives and asking them to please vote for or against certain things like SB 40, which, as I understand, also passed out of the Senate yesterday.
Yes, we were there.
SB 40, can you explain that one a little bit, please?
Well, so Senator David Johnson brought the bylaws change, right? He was on that bylaws committee along with, I believe, Wheeler. That was their intention, to take away the precinct committee person's right to vote at convention, right? And that was shot down. That was not supported. And so Senator David Johnson also had this bill, SB 40, to take the lieutenant governor, the SOS, and the AG and out of the convention and put it on the primary ballot for them to be selected. So what they came up with by the time they got down to their Fifth Amendment, I believe, is taking all of the candidates, including the PUC, the state auditor, the state treasurer, and all of them, and putting them on the primary ballot. And it's my understanding yesterday with that Fifth Amendment that they ended up getting the Democrat votes. And then they played some games. We watched a few of them pass their vote and get the tally and then go ahead and vote no. So they looked good. All the while we know what they're doing. And they're complaining about backroom deals and under the table dealings, when in fact it was quite obvious by sitting there and just observing their behavior and what they were doing, their communications on the floor, that they're the ones with the backroom dealings. And it's been an all-out war on the grassroots and the conservatives in the party. And let me tell you, this is happening in Oklahoma, South Carolina, Georgia, Colorado, all over the country. And we're getting messages and calls, and it is a nationwide destruction of the Republican Party, in my view, because they don't want us to have any opinion. They like the power the way it is, and this change and this uprising of the grassroots who have had enough. They're doing everything that they can to silence us.
So when you say that this is happening, you mean that the rights of delegates are being removed? Is that right?
They're attempting to, yes. And so, it's almost identical what's happening here with what's happening in South Carolina. One of their biggest counties they took over about 2 years ago in South Carolina, and it's my understanding they're trying to invent. They changed the rules in the middle of the game when things aren't going their way. So they're trying to invent another tier of the GOP over top of these people who took over their party in South Carolina.
Wow.
And they have the same
kind of idea as stacking the Supreme Court, right? Just adding more judges, because the current makeup of the Supreme Court judges. So that's really interesting. So essentially what leadership is talking about is creating a form of direct democracy, it sounds like, right? So rather than having representatives at a convention vote out in the open so that that the election has not been tampered with, right? Because that's the other issue that we're discussing today is election integrity. And so when individuals within the party have lost faith with it, for election integrity, and then you have this leadership that is removing the convention process or the power from delegates to be a part of the convention process, putting it on a ballot where individuals are concerned about, the results of that. Essentially, so there's concerns there, right? There's obvious red flags, but then essentially what they're advocating for is direct democracy, which is really fascinating to me because like I was touching on earlier in these emailed responses, one of the responses was that any individual who believes that delegates should have the ability to elect statewide office holders, it supports special interest and the consolidation of power and is actually against the grassroots. These were responses that representatives said to their represented. And I just think the hypocrisy there is so stunning, right? Because we have a representative form of government, and yet those individuals who are in power and by all means backed by special interest, just hilarious to me, are then telling delegates who are a part of the party that they shouldn't want, nor should they have the same amount of power or influence in the future of their own political party. Does that make any sense to you?
A lot of what I witnessed yesterday didn't make any sense to me, and what's been happening basically since the convention and prior to the convention, with instituting the $150 fee and all the things that they've been trying to do to limit the participation in government. And they've been claiming, right? Oh, we've been trying to build the party, and here comes your party. And wait a minute, we don't want you people because you don't, quote from Yankton, vote the way you're supposed to, end quote. So yeah, it was really hilarious watching Senator Diedrich yesterday say, what would you rather have all these votes on the primary ballot so we can watch it counted in public? Are you kidding me? First thing they do is come and try and limit the amount of people that can watch the count. And secondly, our votes are counted by a black box machine, and we have no audit trail. The auditors have made it clear they don't know what it is. They don't know how to get it. We don't have the machinery to retrieve it, and we've never audited the vote after the election. So that is a complete joke. And secondly, he said, then going in the convention and voting and having it counted behind, behind closed doors, which is totally not true because they were hand counted, paper ballots passed down the line, hand counted in front of everyone, in front of your entire county representation. And then they go to the tellers, and there's more than one teller. There's a representative of each candidate standing there, and more than 5 people are counting the tallies and computing them on their own computers with their own software that they can read the output. That is hypocrisy at its finest. So it's their own version of their own reality, and it's clear that our versions of reality don't align at all.
I would say so. Well, that is fascinating, and especially the comment about being a communist for wanting to have clear, free, and elections with integrity.
He also said, I hope that we all have the intestinal fortitude, right, to withstand basically our attacks on democracy. So yeah, it's.
And he used the term democracy.
I got to go back. I don't have I need the audio clip. We have it. We have video and audio clip. And I was just going through before we got on here today, to download that, but find our website, find our Telegram page, and we'll be posting those clips, and everybody can hear it for themselves. Exactly what Senator Schoenbeck said about the grassroots yesterday.
And where can people find that? Can you give us your website, please?
Our website is sdcanvassing.com. SD is in South Dakota, canvassing with 2 S's.com. And we have a Telegram page, SD Canvassing channel. So you can find us there. And we also have a Truth Social page that's kind of just getting up and running, doesn't have a lot of content, but we're going to try and post more there too.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time, Jessica. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming on with me this afternoon.
Have a good day.
You too.